okay. I'm just looking for him. Where'd he go? I'm looking for the lady with the bonnet. Thank you so much. Yeah. See all those bricks we have at home, right?
Sorry about that.
Wow. So when the microwave breaks.
What I have here is a setup for whitesmithing. And whitesmithing is anyone who works with white metals, as opposed to blacksmith, which is iron and tar. And by the way, the blacksmith was the most important craftsman in the village. Blacksmith, okay? I'm a whitesmith, and I have molds, and that's a spoon mold. Put the halves together and pour this molten pewter in there and fill the cavity. First, my pewter has to be the right temperature. It has to be above 450 degrees. Right? So I have my gauge here, and if I can scorch the wood, I know it's the right temperature to cast. It's the right temperature.
How are you guys? Oh, I know. We noticed some raindrops.
There's the mold. My finger saver. I used to pour it like this, holding it by two fingers, but over the years I've gotten smarter.
That involves thinking ahead.
Okay, so I went from liquid to solid in about 10 seconds.
Now, were these treated in any other further way historically, or people would just use them the way they came out like this?
Oh, we have to take this spoon and knock off the screws and polish it.
But there was no other finish or anything else put on them? They were just,
no, just like that's how they come on the mold. And you have to cut that off, maybe trim off the excess on the side, and maybe a little polish, but that's it. And they don't stay shiny too long.
right.
I have another mold. Let's show you here. Now, it's a badge of military merit.
Wow.
And on the back side is Washington.
Lovely.
And this medal was made to commemorate the anniversary of the Purple Heart.
Wonderful.
Over there.
what? Basic prosperity. Or you want to go, look at it. Look at him. You want me on his team or my team? Or like trespass? You don't mind. Him. Look at him. Ask your mother, who would she rather you hang out with? Him, this retrograde rebel, or me, a modicum. Now this is a gang mold. It's a musket ball mold. It's for the brown bess musket, and the ball is just slightly smaller than 3/4 of an inch diameter, and weighs about an ounce. Try that again. You just have to knock them on the mold.
It's truly amazing how quickly you can mold things with this.
Yes, and it goes from say maybe 600 degrees into the mold down to about 400 degrees. Still too hot to touch, but normally these are made out of lead. But when you're dealing with kids, I make everything out of pewter, lead free.
Understood.
And that's the size of the ball that they shoot out of the brown bess musket.
Is this warm cider at least?
No, it's cold.
Your side.
Okay, face me. Okay, I am your sergeant of this militia. You got a mutiny in there. Okay, in line.
Towards the apple.
Okay, Dad. Okay, face me. Face me.
That sounds like a party.
Okay, so you... Difference is professional soldier, amateur soldier. Okay? Kind of brings us to this guy over here.
Is he a rented soldier?
Not Ashen. Any other ideas who this might be? Not French. They wore white. So that, if you look at his buttons, they're RP. And there's a little crown on it. So he's a Royal Provincial. Also known as a loyalist or a Tory. Okay? So also before the war, not a soldier, but he's motivated by something very different than anybody else. He's motivated by revenge. Right? There's an old saying, revenge is the best revenge. So think about this. This guy and this guy are next door neighbors. This guy doesn't like what this guy thinks, so he throws him out of town, and then he takes his farm. This guy is really mad, and he's going to get back at him.
That specifically happened here in Darien.
Yeah.
Well, everybody who was a loyalist or Tory was thrown out of the state, not just town.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the war, Connecticut was one of the first states to declare itself in rebellion after Massachusetts.
Yep.
And one of their first policies was to round up everybody who was not on board and throw them out. They threw them over to Long Island and New York, out of the borders.
Or they throw him in prison. So I don't know if any of you have ever been up to Old Newgate Prison in East Granby. It's a depleted copper mine. It's basically a hole 40 feet down, and they threw him in. You're going to live in the hole. So, say again?
Why do you have to wear all different uniforms just for a different reason?
Well, because you're fighting on a different side. So they wore uniforms so that they knew who was who on the battlefield. All right. You know, if it was wearing a red coat, this guy was going to be shooting at him. And if he was wearing a blue coat, that guy's going to be shooting at him. Green coat got a little confusing. So this guy's motivated by revenge. So there was a lot of raids into Connecticut during the war. You know, the biggest one was up to Danbury to destroy the depot. 1,500 of these guys landed at Campo Beach, led by 300 of these guys. These guys knew every road, every stream, every bridle path in the area because it was their home. Okay? Also equipped the same. These guys, pretty funny uniform, right? A lot of hairy stuff falling off it. Any idea who those guys were? So, these guys were Americans. For the most part, they were out on the frontier in Pennsylvania and Virginia. These guys were riflemen. So there's a difference between a military musket and a rifle. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you look at this, right? You would think that this is the bigger, scarier thing, right? But the truth is, this is very inaccurate. Okay? So maybe 80 yards. This can shoot very accurately for up to about 250. So 80 versus 250. Well, it's just this particular one is small. There's another one over here that's really long.
This is a Pennsylvania long rifle. So,
right.
A little bit of later development.
So these guys made their living out on the frontiers, killing animals for a living. Right? They were buckskins, fur trading, and they used rifles. Rifles were very expensive, but they were made to order. Okay? So this is short, and it shoots a bigger bullet than that one that's long and shoots a smaller bullet. But this is what I wanted, so this is what the gunsmith made. They're made to order. They're very expensive. So everybody shows up with whatever they have, and they've got to bring the loading materials for their particular rifle. Okay. George Washington wanted 8 companies, and he got 10. they shoot further and straighter and more accurate. Why wouldn't we want more of those?
So these
Well-
guys, the frontiersmen, were they organized or?
They were organized. They got organized into companies, and like I said, out of Pennsylvania, Washington wanted 8 companies. They formed up. They had recruiters went around and said, "We want you to join," and they marched from Pennsylvania to Boston. And they really dazzled everybody. Everywhere they went, they dazzled the public with how accurately they could shoot. The problem is, so this is smoothbore, and to load this, it's a cartridge box. This is a cartridge. So when the British showed up, you don't show up with a British Brown Bess, which is a 75 caliber smooth bore, and everybody carried cartridges in a cartridge. So a cartridge is just a paper tube with a bullet, which is just a round lead ball in the bottom of it, and black powder on top. And they fold it up, and they carry 30 of them in a cartridge box. And to load this, so I'm just going to show you. So this is a flintlock, and it's not loaded. So this is carbon steel, high carbon steel. This is flint. Okay, flint is just a rock. Okay, but because of the molecular structure of it, when you hit it a certain way, it gets very, very sharp. All right. So I would take my cartridge, bite the end of it off, put a little bit of powder in the pan, and I would close it. That holds the powder in the pan. That's to prime it. I would turn it around, take the rest of it, dump it down the barrel, and then I would take my ramrod and ram the whole thing down, taper everything, down the barrel all the way to the bottom. Now it's ready to go. All right. The way this works is, when I pull the trigger, this flint is going to hit, this is called the frizzen, and as it hits it, it's going to throw it forward and open it up. But also when it hits it, it's going to shave off a little piece of the steel, and that's what causes the spark. So the flint shaving off a little piece of the steel makes the spark. That's actually a piece of steel coming off at about 2,000 threads. Okay? The spark hopefully will ignite the powder that's in the pan. And if you guys want to look, there's a little hole right
We'll come
there.
around. We'll come around.
See it? There's a little hole that goes from the pan into the barrel.
Yeah, base of the pen.
So
Yeah, it's called a touch hole.
it's called a vent or a touch hole.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is rifle.
So hopefully the flint hitting the steel ignites the powder in the pan. Hopefully there's enough flame to go through that little hole into the barrel, ignite the powder charge in the barrel, and kick the ball off. There's a lot of hope going on. So when I pull this, it's not loaded. You'll see the spark, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it, right?
Yeah, same thing.
So I don't know if you guys saw it. So keep an eye right here. You'll see the spark. See it? There's a lot of hope going on there. All right. The advantage of this, or one of the advantages of this, is when you have a cartridge and you have a box of cartridges and the ball is undersized for the barrel, you can load this really fast. I can load this and fire it 3 times a minute, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. Pretty impressive.
And how about the other one?
Yeah.
So this is a rifle. The difference between a musket and a rifle is this, the inside of it has grooves. And when you ram the ball down there, it carves these grooves into it. It causes it to spin. So if you've ever played baseball or football and you throw the ball, you try to impart spin onto it because that makes it faster and more accurate. Well, this is the same thing in principle. You load these backwards compared to the musket. So the first thing they would do, he's got a powder horn on him. I suppose I should come over here. I'll have a powder horn with a measure on it, and that will be pre-measured to the correct amount for this rifle. The first thing he'll do is he'll pour the powder down into the rifle. Then he will pull out a patch, which is made out of paper or some kind of fiber. Even thin buckskin could probably be used, but he'd put the patch on the barrel. He would take out a ball. The ball would go down, and he would use this, which is called a short starter, and that would be just to start the ball in the barrel.
We put the ball to about here.
Yeah, it would be about 4 or 5 inches down the barrel. Then he would finally pull out the ramrod.
Yeah, exactly.
Ram it the rest of the way. Turn the rammer. Now this is much more difficult because the ball in the musket is loose. It can move around in the barrel. There's very little resistance when you're actually ramming it. With this, it's 4 or 5 times the amount of effort just to ram it all the way down there. Then he'll have a second powder flask with a different measure, with different powder. That'll be for the pan. So he'll load the pan, close it, cock it, and if you notice, this rifle has 2 triggers. This back one is to set the front one and turn it into a much lighter trigger, so it's more accurate. You're not going to flinch when you pull the trigger. Then he'll acquire his target with these sights and pull the trigger. The difference is you can fire about 3 of those in a minute. This takes about 1.5 minutes just to load one shot. And then there's aiming and firing, which, who knows when you're going to do that. I can't remember which battle it is off the top of my head, but during one of the battles, a frontiersman sat up in a tree with a rifle.
Saratoga.
Yeah, it was at Saratoga. And he shot the British commander off of his course. It took him 3 shots. And he was sitting up in a tree, he would hand the rifle down, they'd hand him up another one.
Oh, wow.
And
So you might ask, if this is accurate to about 80 yards, and this is accurate to about 250 to 300, why wouldn't everybody have one of those? Right? It's a good question. They're really expensive, they're not standardized, and it takes a really long time to load. So the question is, how fast can you run? So if I put this on, and you start reloading, can I get to you in 1.5 minutes? Because this is the terror weapon of the 18th century.
I would release the tourniquet, and if I see a little blood, that's good. If I see a leak, I'd have to go in there with the tenaculum again and tie it off. The bad news is if a vein collapses or artery collapses, then I have to do the whole operation again higher up, and then your chances of survival go way down. Hopefully you do good. And then we stitch you up, put you in a hospital tent, hopefully lice free, and observe you for a few days. Make sure, look for a laudable pus. it's like a whitish pus. If you see it like turn green or brown, that's not a good sign. That means it's a major infection. But they believed that a laudable pus was acceptable. That means you were healing well. Most of the surgeons in the colonies never went to medical school. Not that that would help. You could go to medical school in Europe, 4 years of theology and theory, and not even see a patient. You know, maybe some in Paris would have it, but I know Paris allowed cadavers to be. You could work on cadavers. You couldn't do it in the colonies. A lot of the colonies. You know, you have to do it secretly. Maybe a good professor would say, "Okay, get your lanterns, your picks, and your shovels. We're going grave robbing."
Interesting.
You know, secretly.
Well, maybe you can tell us something about what you have here to the folks at home.
Well, this is what a soldier may carry on the march. During the Revolutionary War, they did not have personal-sized tents. You may have seen the A tent that has a frame. Those are carried on wagons. This is just a ground cloth, an oil cloth that would protect them from the rain. They usually would have it on the ground, but this is very light, and they could set up something like this as a lean-to, and then also just roll it up, and it would also fit in their blanket roll or their knapsack that they're carrying. The sticks are just something that you could put together and carry, or just regular bigger branches that you would get out of the woods to set it up. But it's just some kind of shelter that the soldiers would have, or could have. It wasn't an issue, but they could carry with them.
I guess if there was a wind, you'd want to aim it in the right direction. Is that it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's not very sturdy, but it's good enough to keep the rain or the sun off of you if you're in an open field. And if you had two soldiers, you could kind of make a tent out of it, or certainly make it a little bit bigger, however you tied it together.
Right.
The two together, you have two people in the same time.
Right.
No.
And that's a foot warmer. That you have a little coals in there, and I got that out of somebody's barn here in town. I will return it after we get back on the march. Something a lady might use, but it'll warm your hands up in the evening. And then basically it's just everything else. I did have a little fishing kit. I found a long skinny stick for a fishing pole. And I made a little fishing kit, a little bobber, and inside my little pouch here I have a fishing hook, which is the style of the times, some linen thread, and a lead shot. And I just keep that together. If we're near a stream or a little river, I might try my hand at trying to catch some fish. And this is pretty small and fits inside my pack.
Could you cook on top of that foot warmer, or was it?
No, that's strictly for heat. I mean, if you had something, a tin plate, and you had something, food, and you wanted to keep it warm, it might keep it warm. I know if they're served food, they generally have wood bowls, all different kinds of shapes. The good thing about the wood is if you've got a hot stew or something being served to you, the wood acts as an insulator.
I keep my cleaning stuff in here. I get out of rabbit's fur and deer skin, and all this stuff in here to clean my gun when I need to.
If you were going to cook on the fire, you could cook in a tin plate, and you could get a piece of stick and whittle it so that it would act as a handle on your plate, and then you could hold that. But it's a little hard balancing it, and eating at the same time. So that's why the wood bowl works out better. We got a candle box. It's all self-contained. You put your candle in here, and inside the container is my 2 candles. I got a piece of flint that's no longer serviceable in my weapon, and I have a striker. And you strike the flint against the striker, and you catch the spark in the char cloth, which is just charred cloth, and you catch that spark, and then you drop that spark inside what's called tow, and blow on it, and eventually that'll ignite, and then you put that in, and that's your fire starter. They didn't have matches during the Revolutionary War, or what they called lucifers during the Civil War. They had to actually make a spark. If you got damp conditions, good luck.
Okay.
If you got damp conditions, good luck on firing your weapons.
Yeah.
But all of this can carry in my haversack, and you basically have your haversack with whatever items you have, your canteen, your cartridge box with your ammunition, and your bayonet scabbard on the other side. And that's how you would go off into
She carries a lot of weight.
How much do you think all this weighs?
I have a note to put it on and figure out, because people keep saying, I'm saying this is not a lot, this is very light, the sticks are light. I'm saying maybe 20
I was
pounds.
just going to say 20 pounds because the gun's like 10,
The gun
12.
is another 9, so, you know, maybe 10 to 15 and 9, so maybe 25 with everything on it. Water in your canteen, a full cartridge box. Could be with everything on you, maybe 30 pounds. But they didn't have a lot. They were on the march. You wanted a light load anyways.
Right.
So this is General Washington's position flag. Wherever the general went, his flag was with him. So if he stayed here at this homestead, and this flag was in the front of this building, and it was unfurled, meaning it was uncovered, like it is now, where the wind can open it up, that means he'd be taking you, can come visit him. If the flag is here, that means he's here, but if it's covered or tied, furled, he's not taking guests. He's watching TV, we don't know what he's doing. If the flag is gone, but the camp is still here, that means he's out and about. When the flag is back, that's where he is.
So he didn't want to hide where he was?
Not in these parts, no.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he was an incredibly brave man. He never hit himself, even on the battlefield. The remarkable thing about General Washington is, while everyone else around him was being shot and wounded and killed, he escaped all injury in all those years of war. And he was, unlike a British soldier officer, he wasn't behind the troops telling his lesser officers to give commands. He was with his flag at the point of the enemy, at the point of battle, right in front of them, and in times in between to rally his men to say forward. He was an incredibly, perfect human being, none of us are, but he's an amazing American symbol. So he also wanted 6-pointed stars, because as a Mason, a 5-pointed star, like a pentagon, if you connect all the tips, was considered a little bit satanic. So he also thought a 6-pointed star looked better in the sky, more like a twinkling star. So flags are all about colors and symbols. This one here is a great one. Actually, you don't mind being on the camera, do you? Come on forward. I'm going to have you hold the flag here. You take that in, I'll take this in. So this flag can stand right up there. He'll catch us. And take the end and switch out. Grab that and walk away from me. Just the top. So, any idea what the symbol is? It's all colors and symbols with flags. Red is courage. Latin means conquer or die.
Okay.
So if you just had that on a flag, conquer or die, that'd be impressive. That tells your enemy that you're not afraid of him. You're not putting a puppy on it. You're not putting a turkey. You're not putting, oh, don't hurt me. You're putting conquer or die. You'll have to kill me, otherwise I'll kill you. The other thing we have here is a Roman dagger, one of the most powerful, well-known weapons of human history. An armored knight, an arm of an armored knight. But the arm coming out of these, and what do you think this fuzzy floating stuff is? It's all over today. Jameson. Clouds. This symbolically represents the arm of God about to strike down the enemies of whoever carries this flag. And this would have been Bedford Militia, and they were at the Concord Bridge with this flag, which is from the 1600s, one of the oldest known flags in America.
Oh, wow.
And you can still see what's left of it, which is pretty intact, at the Bedford Library in Bedford, Mass.
Okay.
Still there. It's a dragoon flag, so it's smaller than the other ones, so that when a soldier on horseback is carrying it, he could see underneath the flag. Because normally these flags would be square and double in length. They'd be a big square, 5 by 5, 6 by 6. But on horseback, you can't see to your left if it's a big flag. Plus, if a British soldier or an Indian is coming up at you with a bayonet or a sword or spear, you won't be able to see underneath, and it'll catch in your stirrups. So, a lot of symbols. Now, while it talks about violence, striking down my enemies, it has these 3 round spheres. They're probably a fruit. Any guess what that fruit could be? It's a fruit that's dark maroon, dark red. When you cut it in half, hundreds of seeds inside of it.
Pomegranate. Pomegranate?
Pomegranate.
Pomegranate.
Right. So, the pomegranate, used in all colonial paintings and history, is to represent life for the future because of the seeds. So when you come through a horrible winter, and that's why the green color is also representative of hope for the future, for plantings, for new baby calves and chickens and anything that comes up in spring. So the pomegranates represent hope, and it's a positive symbol, while the main symbol here is killing my enemy. It's got a dual, story it's telling. Thank you, sweetheart. Appreciate that. So symbolism with flags is awesome.
Yeah.
Now here's a non-related flag, a symbol, not flags.
What is that? That's okay.
Yeah, come on up. Get closer. This is a scalp. Okay, it's not mine, right? Because no one would scalp me. Come on up, sweetheart. You're okay there? So, being American Indians, Connecticut, New England Indians did not have a written language. Let's say this was a trophy scalp, okay? This is not from someone that's 60. It's not from a little girl, a young lady like that. It's from a soldier or an officer. So that means that a trophy scalp, harder to get, more risky to try to kill a man who's already armed and knows how to use a weapon, like a soldier. So you'd want to pass the history down. But if I told you a story, by the time it got to the 15th, 20th person, like in the classroom, it's not the same.
Yeah.
So they use colors and symbols because they don't have a written alphabet.
Oh.
So this scalp is from a soldier that wears red.
Oh.
He's right around here somewhere. There he is. What army is he, British or American? He's in red. He's British soldier. Right, you're right, sweetheart. And it also, so the color says one story of where it came from, but then the center tells how he did it. The man was killed, this British soldier was killed with not a tomahawk, not a war club, not a bow and arrow. What do you think he took this scalp and killed the man with? That symbol's right there. A musket ball. And if you go see Mr. Freebaird, he's making musket balls right there. So this Indian here who killed this soldier, we know it's a soldier, it's a British soldier, and he killed him using a high-tech weapon back then. For anybody, a rifle or musket was a high-tech weapon. So for an American Indian to use a weapon that they weren't born and raised with.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was surprised they had.
So he knew how to clean it, because if you don't clean it, it won't work. He knew how to load it, aim it, fire it, and he killed this soldier and then took his scalp. So this is one way of passing, using colors and symbols, passing on a story when you can't record it, can't take a picture of it, and you don't have a written language. Pretty interesting, right?
Thank you.
Well, I have here a knitted man's purse, a copy of what's called the Gunnister Man purse in the Museum of Scotland, and it was the remnants of a traveler who regrettably did not make it to his destination, but they dated his purse to 1690 by the coins inside, and it took me 2 years to learn how to knit this small, and I wouldn't have made it in the 18th century because women of the day would do an inch a day on their stockings. So if this took me 2 years, my children would be going barefoot in winter. I also made this miser's purse. This is a gentleman's purse. It works by, you slide the rings opposite, there's a hidden slit, and now you can shake the coins down. You put them back, and the ring holds them nice and snug. And usually they were finished in a different manner. One has a tassel, one does not, and this helps you sort your money so that you're not giving out a gold penny when you could be giving out just a copper penny for your ride home in a dark carriage. This is an original from the 19th century of a very fine woven silk, and I simply can't imagine what you would have carried in this. I'd be afraid to put money in there. It's very fine and very fragile, but beautiful, so it must have made a lovely accent to someone's costume. And what I'm doing here is making tape. Most of my clothing ties on in one way or another if it doesn't pin. And you can see here tape that I wove, that I used to finish off this petticoat, which simply ties on. The front ties at the back ties at the front, and it's a very forgiving fashion. You can gain or lose 25 pounds and these skirts still fit, which is a good thing if you're having a baby every other year. You don't want to be replacing your wardrobe that frequently. So this is the tape loom that I used to make that tape. Another way that it's economical is, of course, lacing doesn't fall off, whereas a man's buttons do. These were excavated from the gardens of my 1790 house, and I think the gent that lost this nice big button was in trouble when he got home, because that would have been a hassle to replace. Mom would have had to figure out if she could get an exact one to match the others on the gentleman's display, or she'd just have to replace them all. So that would have been quite the effort for her. So that's basically what I have going on today.
Wonderful. Maybe you can tell us a little about the dress you're wearing.
The dress is a sackback, which is a copy of a French fashion. The idea was the conspicuous consumption of fabric to show that you were a woman of means, that you could afford basically to waste fabric. This is a 3-to-1 reduction ratio, so I've wasted it up the front. I've put 2 flounces on here. I've got my kick pleat at the bottom of the petticoat. So basically I'm saying I can afford to waste fabric.